I remember standing outside that apartment door, the one everyone called luxury. Music was shaking the walls. Laughter spilled into the hallway like perfume. People inside wore clothes that cost more than a month of someone's rent. And there I was, Teresa Morris, holding my old brown handbag with both hands like a child afraid to drop her lunch. My coat was thin. My shoes were worn out. My hair was pinned back the same way I did it when I used to sew for $10 a dress. Anyone who saw me that night would have thought I had nothing. And honestly, that was exactly what I wanted them to think. Behind that door, my son Jordan was hosting his first housewarming and business celebration with his wife Megan and her wealthy family. Everyone believed Patrick Walsh, Megan's father, had paid for the apartment. Everyone believed Jordan had married up and was now living a life far above his poor mother's world. Nobody knew the truth. I stood there, listening to the muffled sounds of clinking glasses and Megan's high-pitched laugh. I heard Bridget Walsh telling someone, "Oh yes, we invited her. You know how elders get when they feel left out. She's harmless. Poor thing." People chuckled softly. I tightened my grip on my handbag. Inside it was everything they had been trying to take from me, a land deed, 5 property titles, copies of forged permits, and a tiny recorder that held their real words, words they'd never want the world to hear. Words about controlling the old woman, and putting her away before she becomes a problem. Words about my son, and how they planned to shape him into something he was never meant to be. I raised my hand to knock, but I paused. I let myself breathe. I let myself feel the sting of every moment they had treated me like I was less than human, like I was nothing but a poor, simple, helpless old woman. A woman they could dismiss. A woman they could manipulate. A woman they could erase. My fingers brushed the edge of one document inside my bag, the deed for the entire building they were standing in. The building I owned. The building Patrick bragged about buying. I smiled, a small, tired smile. They had no idea who they were about to face. So I knocked softly on the door, 3 gentle taps, the sound of a quiet woman entering a loud world. But that night, I wasn't the helpless one. I was the storm. Before we go on, tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories coming soon. My name is Teresa Morris, and for most of my life, I lived in a small apartment above a corner store on the south side of the city. Nothing fancy. Nothing loud. Just simple walls, steady floors, and sunlight that came through the kitchen window in the morning like a soft blessing. I liked it that way. After my husband passed, peace became my closest friend. People who visited my place never saw anything special. They saw old furniture, shelves filled with canned beans, and a sewing machine with chipped paint. What they didn't see, because I never showed them, were the drawers beneath my bed, each one lined with documents my husband left behind. Deeds. Letters. Faded maps of land his great-grandmother once tended with her bare hands. I kept everything tucked away, wrapped in clear sleeves like fragile memories. I didn't grow up with wealth, but after I married my husband, I learned the value of quiet money, the kind you protect, not parade. He used to say, "Teresa, some folks show their wealth with gold, but ours will grow in silence." And it did. Over decades, that old land grew in value, and the rental buildings we bought slowly became the backbone of my security. No one knew. Not neighbors. Not friends. Not even my son. I raised Jordan with love, not numbers. I wanted him to see kindness before he saw money. Sacrifice before comfort. Hard work before pride. For years, it was just the two of us against the world. He was my joy, my hope, my reason to wake up every morning. I never imagined that the love I poured into him would one day push me into the shadows of his new life, or that acting small would become the only way to protect myself. I still remember the day Jordan brought Megan to meet me. He called early that morning, excitement shaking through his voice. "Mom, I'm bringing someone special today," he said, almost breathless. I smiled at the sound of it. My son rarely sounded that happy. I made a small pot of stew, fixed my hair, wiped the kitchen counters twice. I wanted everything to feel warm when they walked in. When the knock finally came, I straightened my sweater and opened the door. Jordan stood there beaming, taller somehow. Beside him was Megan Walsh, a slim, polished, dressed in soft colors that looked expensive even from a distance. Her makeup was light but perfect, and her smile, it was warm for 2 seconds, then faded into curiosity. The kind people wear when they're unsure what they've just stepped into. She glanced around my hallway, at the peeling paint, the old coat rack, my thrift store shoes under the bench. She gave a small polite nod, like she wanted to hide her first impression but couldn't quite manage to. "This is Megan, Mom," Jordan said proudly, pulling her close. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Morris," she replied, her voice sweet but tight. "Oh, what a quaint building." Quaint. That word landed softly but carried something sharp. I invited them in. Megan walked slowly, her eyes scanning every corner of the room. She stopped at my sewing machine, fingertip brushing the chipped paint. "Do you still use this?" she asked. "Yes," I said gently. "It still works." She smiled again, thin and polite. How adorable. Jordan didn't notice the tone. He was too busy talking about work, about promotions, about the future he was dreaming with this woman. I listened, smiling when he looked my way. But in Megan's eyes, I felt it, the first quiet tremor of a judgment that would one day grow into a storm. A week after that first visit, Jordan invited me to join a short video call with Megan's parents. "Just to say hello," he said. "They want to meet you." I didn't think much of it. I tied a scarf around my hair, straightened my blouse, and sat at my little dining table with the chipped edges. When the screen lit up, Patrick and Bridget Walsh appeared sitting in a bright, marble kitchen, white cabinets, gold handles, spotless counters that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Patrick had the kind of voice that filled the room even through a screen. "Jordan. My man," he boomed, clapping once, loud enough to make me jump. Bridget gave Megan a small kiss on the cheek and smiled like she was performing for an audience. Jordan introduced me. "This is my mom, Teresa." Bridget tilted her head, smiling thinly. "Oh, how lovely. Hello, Teresa. We've heard very simple things about you." Simple. Another soft word with a sharp edge. I nodded politely. "Nice to meet you both." Patrick leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking over the screen as if trying to evaluate everything he could about me in 3 seconds. "Don't you worry about a thing," he said. "We'll take good care of Jordan from now on. He's stepping into a whole new world." Megan looked down, careful, controlled, like she was managing the image of the moment. Jordan laughed nervously. I didn't know what to say to people who talked about taking care of a grown man as if I'd never done it. As if I wasn't the one who raised him through sickness, struggle, and long nights sewing clothes to pay tuition. Before we hung up, Bridget added cheerfully, "We'd love to host an engagement dinner, so Teresa doesn't have to. It will be easier that way." Easier for who? The question pressed against my heart as the call ended. It was the first moment I felt myself shrinking, just a little, under their world. The night of the engagement dinner, I stood outside the Walsh's home holding a small wrapped gift in my hands, a pair of embroidered napkins I'd stitched myself. I knew it was simple, but I hoped it would feel personal. When the door opened, warm light spilled onto the porch, along with the thick sound of laughter. Bridget greeted me first. She wore a shimmering dress and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Teresa. You made it," she said, taking a quick glance at my dress like she was assessing damage. Come in, come in. Shoes off, please. Our floors scratch easily." I slipped them off quietly. Inside, the house looked like something from a television show, high ceilings, crystal lighting, fresh flowers on every surface. Their guests milled around with champagne glasses, wearing clothes that whispered money with every movement. I clutched my simple gift a little tighter. Bridget guided me to a long dining table, then placed me in a chair near the swinging kitchen door, far from the center where she, Patrick, Megan, and Jordan Saturday. "I thought you'd be most comfortable here," she said softly. "Close to the staff if you need anything." Close to the staff. Not close to family. The servers moved around me all night, their trays clattering inches from my shoulder. When I tried to give Megan the embroidered napkins, she glanced at them, then at her mother. "Oh, these are sweet," Megan said, forcing a smile. "Maybe we can find a spot for them in the storage room, right, Mom?" Guests laughed, softly, politely, unknowingly cutting straight through me. I sat quietly, hands folded, pretending the sting didn't reach my heart. But it did. Deeply. And Jordan, he didn't even look my way long enough to notice. A few days after the engagement dinner, Megan invited me to her parents' home again, a casual gathering, she called it. I told myself it would be easier this time, that maybe I was imagining the tension. But deep down, a small ache warned me something was shifting in ways I couldn't yet see. Their backyard was wide and manicured, the kind of place where the grass looked too perfect to step on. People chatted around the fire pit, holding sparkling drinks and laughing like they lived in a different world. Maybe they did. I was pouring myself a cup of sweet tea when I heard Bridget's voice behind me, light and musical, the way a person sounds when they're sharing a charming story. "Oh yes," she told one of her friends, "Jordan came from almost nothing. It's been such a joy uplifting him and helping his sweet mother. She tries, but you know, poverty leaves marks." The friend murmured sympathetically. Bless her heart. My hands froze. The pitcher trembled slightly in my grip. Poverty. Marks. Uplifting. Words that wrapped themselves around my chest like cold fingers. I turned slowly. Bridget saw me and quickly placed her hand on her friend's arm, lowering her voice as if she was embarrassed for me. "Oh, Teresa. We were just talking about how strong you are. So resilient." Resilient. Another gentle blade. Megan appeared beside her, linking her arm through her mother's. "We're just grateful you're letting us take care of Jordan now. He deserves a better future." A better future. Meaning one I couldn't give him. I nodded politely, even though my heart was folding into itself. I held my sweet tea tightly, letting its warmth steady my trembling fingers. They didn't know me. Or my life. Or the sacrifices I made. They only saw a woman they could reduce, without ever asking who she really was. A week later, Megan called and asked me to come over because Patrick had something exciting to share. I went, hoping maybe this time things would feel different. But when I stepped into their living room, bright, expensive, cold, I felt that same pressure in my chest. Like I needed to shrink to fit into their world. Patrick sat in a leather armchair, legs crossed, swirling a glass of dark liquor like he was holding court. Jordan and Megan sat together on the sofa, hand in hand, both smiling with an energy that felt just a little too rehearsed. "Teresa," Patrick boomed, "we've been thinking about Jordan's future. A man with his talent shouldn't be living in less than ideal circumstances." I wasn't sure what he meant at first, but then Megan leaned forward, excitement glowing in her eyes. "Daddy found us an apartment, downtown, top floor, beautiful view. He negotiated the price personally. It'll be perfect for us." Patrick nodded proudly. A Walsh-level home. Somewhere worthy of Jordan's new trajectory. Jordan looked at me with hopeful eyes, waiting for my reaction. I smiled softly, though something inside me tightened. "That's wonderful," I said. "But there are affordable, safe places closer to my neighborhood too," Patrick cut me off with a chuckle. "Oh, Teresa. We can't have Jordan raising children in that part of town. He needs the right environment to grow." Megan squeezed Jordan's arm. "We're doing this for his success. For our family. Our family." I noticed she didn't include me. Jordan didn't defend the place he grew up. He didn't defend me either. He just said, "Mom, this is a big step. Megan's parents know what's best." What's best? For everyone except the woman who raised him. And with those words, I felt the first deep crack between us. That night, after leaving the Walsh home, I sat alone at my kitchen table with a cup of warm tea. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I opened the drawer beneath the table and pulled out a worn leather folder, its corners softened from years of being opened, closed, and opened again whenever life made me doubt myself. Inside were the pieces of a story I had never told anyone. Not even Jordan. The deeds to 5 rental buildings my husband and I bought slowly over the years, scraping together savings from sewing jobs, shifts he picked up at the docks, and careful planning. We bought when prices were low, neighborhoods overlooked. We maintained the buildings ourselves, repainted walls, repaired boilers, fixed windows, quiet work that added up to quiet wealth. Then there was the land. 22 acres passed down through generations of his family. Back when we inherited it, most people didn't care about that stretch of soil. But the city expanded, new developments rose, and the value climbed without a sound. What was once humble farmland became a goldmine. I traced my fingers over the documents, the signatures in my husband's handwriting. My chest tightened. I had planned, for years, to one day pass some of this on to Jordan, not because he needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted him secured, grounded, free from worry. But watching him now, wrapped tightly in Megan's world, eager for Patrick's approval, I wondered if giving him everything would lift him up, or pull me down. I closed the folder carefully and slid it back into the drawer. Not out of shame. Out of protection. I realized something quietly devastating that night. My son didn't know his roots. And worse, he didn't want to. The wedding day came faster than I expected. I woke before sunrise, pressed my dress, and wrapped my hair in soft curls, simple, but neat. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I only wanted to honor the moment. My son was getting married. A mother should feel joy. When I arrived at the venue, a glossy hall decorated with gold arches and white roses, I felt immediately out of place. People floated around in gowns that shimmered under the lights, whispering, laughing, raising glasses. I clutched my small purse and walked slowly toward the seating area. A young woman with a headset stopped me. "Oh, you're Jordan's mom? Right this way." Her smile was polite, but she looked surprised, as if she expected someone grander. She led me to a row near the back, next to a decorative pillar, far from the front where the important family members sat. I glanced at the first rows and saw Patrick and Bridget beaming like royalty, greeting guests, accepting compliments about their daughter. Megan stood beside them, glowing. Jordan stood tall beside her, radiating pride. When he saw me, his smile flickered, gentle but uncertain. He didn't wave me forward. He didn't motion for me to join the family seats. He simply nodded. As the ceremony began, I watched from afar. People whispered around me. "That's his mother? She looks humble. Bless her. Must be overwhelming for her." Overwhelming. Another soft word hiding a sting. After the vows, when Jordan and Megan walked down the aisle as husband and wife, I stepped forward to hug him, to feel that moment every mother dreams of. But Patrick intercepted, pulling Jordan into a tight embrace for a photo with their family. I froze mid-step, my arms folding awkwardly against my chest. In the final pictures, I wasn't beside my son. I was somewhere in the background, blurred by lights and distance. And for the first time that day, I felt the weight of being invisible. A week after the wedding, Jordan came by my apartment. It was late afternoon, the sun slipping low across my living room floor, painting everything gold. I opened the door with a hopeful smile, thinking maybe he wanted to spend some quiet time with me, just mother and son, like before. But he walked in with a different kind of energy. Rushed. Focused. Almost distant. "Mom, I wanted to tell you in person," he began, running a hand through his hair the way he did when he was preparing to say something uncomfortable. "Megan's parents helped us secure the downtown apartment. We're moving in next week." I nodded slowly. "That's wonderful, baby. I'm happy for you both." He exhaled with relief. "Yeah, it's a big step. Patrick said it's time for me to live in a place that matches my potential." He chuckled lightly, not noticing the way my stomach tightened. "And Mom, you don't have to worry about me anymore. You've done enough. Done enough." As if my part in his life was over. I swallowed the ache rising in my chest. "I had planned something for you too," I said softly. "As a wedding gift." His eyes flickered with impatience, something I never saw before. Mom. Megan's family has resources you could never match. You don't need to stress yourself trying. I blinked. I had not been trying to match anyone. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't ask what I had planned. He didn't even pause long enough to consider that I might have something meaningful to give. Instead, he kissed my cheek, thanked me for everything, and hurried out, eager to get back to the world that now shaped his future. The door closed behind him with a soft click. But inside me, something else closed too, something that had held me together for years. For the first time, I wondered if my son might already be lost. 2 days after Jordan's visit, Megan showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard her heels clicking down the hallway long before she knocked, sharp, confident, impatient. When I opened the door, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her perfume filling the room like she was trying to erase the scent of my home. She glanced around as if checking to see whether anything had improved since her last visit. It hadn't. I lived simply because simple gave me peace. Teresa, she began, folding her hands in front of her like she was about to deliver a charity report, I came to talk to you privately. Woman to woman. I offered her tea. She declined. She sat on the couch and crossed her legs, lowering her voice into a gentle, practiced tone, the kind people use when they pretend to be caring while delivering a blow. You know, Jordan and I are building a new life together, she said. And we want to make sure you're supported properly. I waited. She smiled, but her eyes were sharp. Patrick knows a wonderful retirement facility. Very clean, very modern. You'd be around people your age. It could be perfect for you. My stomach dropped. And, she continued, smoothing the fabric of her dress, we think it would help if you sold this little place. You'd have some cash for yourself, and Jordan wouldn't feel pressured to look after you. Look after me? As if I'd ever been a burden. I stared at her, steady and quiet. Megan mistook my silence for weakness. Really, Teresa, she whispered, leaning closer, this is what families do. We help each other, move in the right direction. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not wildly. Just a quiet, clean break. In that moment, I realized they didn't see me as a mother. They saw me as an inconvenience to manage, a problem to solve, a piece of old furniture standing in the way of their perfect picture. That night, after she left, I sat in the dark and made a decision. If they wanted me to be poor, helpless, and harmless, then that's exactly what I would let them see. Because people reveal their truest selves when they think you're powerless. And I was about to let them reveal everything. For the first time in my life, I practiced how to look small. Not weak, but small. A woman who didn't know better. A woman who could be guided, corrected, controlled. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror wearing my oldest sweater, the one with the thinning sleeves, and an apron still stained from last week's stew. I let my shoulders slump. I softened my eyes. I loosened my hair so a few strands fell, making me look tired. Then I practiced a slow, confused nod, one I'd seen older neighbors use when they were embarrassed to ask for help. It shocked me how easy it was. 2 days later, when Megan invited me over for brunch at her parents' home, I wore that old sweater and carried a fraying bag. When I stepped inside, the Walshes took one look and their smiles stretched wider, like they had just confirmed a story they had already written in their minds. Oh, Teresa, Bridget said softly, touching my arm like she was comforting a child. You poor thing. You must be exhausted from the bus ride. I had driven there in my own car, quietly bought and paid for years ago. They never thought to ask. Patrick handed me a small plate of fruit, the kind they give to guests they don't want lingering near the real food. Sit, he said. We'll talk about your future in a bit. I sat obediently. I even let my bag fall open slightly so they could see the old notepad inside, the one with curled pages. What they couldn't see was my phone tucked into my sleeve, recording every word. They smiled at the helpless woman they thought they saw. They had no idea they had invited in someone who had finally opened her eyes. The following weekend, Jordan and Megan invited me to see their new apartment. They were excited, glowing, even. Jordan kept saying how generous Patrick had been, how he handled everything, how he basically gifted us the best deal in the city. I smiled, nodding gently, letting them talk. My heart, though, it beat a slow, heavy rhythm. Because I already knew something they didn't. When we arrived downtown, Megan walked ahead proudly, her heels clicking like a drumroll. "Isn't it stunning?" she said, gesturing at the marble lobby. "Daddy negotiated with the owner. He's so connected." I murmured, eyes drifting over the familiar tile pattern on the floor. Patterns I had chosen years ago. We took the elevator to the 14th floor. Jordan unlocked the door and swung it open dramatically. "Mom, welcome to our new home." The apartment was bright, floor-to-ceiling windows, new fixtures, polished floors. They both looked at me expectantly, waiting for praise. "It's lovely," I said softly. "Truly." Megan wrapped her arm around Jordan. "We're lucky Patrick stepped in. He told the owner about our plans for a family, and they practically begged us to take the place." I almost laughed. Begged? If only they knew. I wandered slowly to the window, touching the fresh paint on the wall. A small sticker caught my eye near the corner, one left on by the maintenance crew while updating the unit. It had the building code, the renovation date, and the company name, Dalton Property Management. Mr. Quincy Dalton. My property agent. My building. My floors. My walls. "This place," I whispered, letting my voice tremble just a little, "it feels familiar." Megan giggled. "Oh, Teresa, you've never been anywhere like this." I smiled quietly. If only she understood how wrong she was. That evening, after leaving Jordan and Megan's new apartment, I went straight home and pulled out the old leather folder from my bottom drawer, the one holding the pieces of my quiet life. But this time, I didn't open the folder for comfort. I opened it for clarity. Inside was my husband's handwriting, steady, patient, full of hope. Next to it lay the ledger I'd kept through the years. Handwritten notes. Dates. Tiny ink lines tracking every small sacrifice I made to push Jordan forward. Rent payments during his first job search. Tuition balances I covered when he hesitated to ask. Money transfers during the months he struggled with Megan's first move across states. I had forgotten how much I gave until the numbers stared back at me. For a moment, the fear returned, not fear of losing my wealth, but fear that I had already lost my son. I pressed my fingers to the page, feeling the indent of every number I had written. My throat tightened. But then something shifted. My fear didn't stay fear. It hardened. It clarified. It turned into something steady. I opened a fresh notebook and began copying the ledger page by page. Clean handwriting. Clear dates. No smudges. I placed the originals into a separate envelope and locked them in a small metal box. Then, one by one, I scanned each page using my phone, saving them in secure folders my husband had taught me how to organize years ago. Every line felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself. This was not revenge, not yet. It was preparation. It was the quiet gathering of truth. People like the Walshes only respected documents, ownership, and proof. Fine. I had plenty. By the time I finished, the fear inside me had turned into a quiet, sharpened power. And the old ledger, once a reminder of sacrifice, was now my first weapon. A few days later, Megan invited me out to lunch with her and Bridget. "Just a little girl's afternoon," she said in the sweetest tone she could fake. I knew better. I wore my old sweater, the one with the sleeves losing their shape, and carried my thinning handbag. I let myself look tired, slow. It wasn't hard. People like them only needed half a reason to believe you were beneath them. The restaurant they chose was one of those places where they serve water in tall glasses and the menus have no prices. I sat down carefully, placing my bag at my feet. Megan and Bridget ordered sparkling drinks with lemon twists. I ordered plain water. Bridget smiled at me like she was looking at a child who needed correcting. "Teresa, we've been thinking a lot about you," she began. "You're so sweet and humble, and we just want to make sure you're managing your life properly." Managing? I echoed softly. Yes, Megan chimed in, flipping her hair. We know finances can be confusing for someone your age, especially when you've never had much. We want to make everything easier for you. Bridget leaned closer, lowering her voice. We're thinking it might be best to open a joint account. You can put whatever little income you have in there, and we'll help you handle the complicated parts. Complicated parts. A new knife wrapped in lace. And of course, Megan added casually, Patrick thinks it's smart if we start planning your long-term care. Just in case something happens. She said long-term care like she had already chosen the room. I nodded slowly, blinking as if trying to understand. Oh, that's very thoughtful. They mistook my quiet for confusion. What they didn't know was that my phone, tucked deep in my sleeve, was recording every polished insult, every patronizing offer, every little scheme disguised as kindness. And I would use every second of it. A week later, Jordan called and asked if I could come by the Walsh house. They want to talk about some plans, he said, voice tense but hopeful. It's important. I went. I shouldn't have, but I went. When I arrived, the atmosphere was different, quiet, heavy, too still. Patrick sat at the head of the dining table, surrounded by papers. Megan and Bridget sat near him, expressions carefully arranged, like this was a board meeting and not a conversation about my life. Jordan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, eyes darting between everyone. Teresa, Patrick said, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table, we were just discussing your situation. Situation. As if my mere existence required management. I sat down slowly. They didn't offer me water. They didn't offer comfort. They didn't even pretend this was about my dignity. Patrick cleared his throat. We think it's time to consider long-term planning. You're alone, and Jordan has responsibilities now. We want to make sure you're taken care of before anything unexpected happens. Megan nodded sympathetically. We want what's best for you. Truly. Bridget added, and we all agree that your neighborhood isn't safe for someone your age. You shouldn't be living there anymore. So they had already discussed me, without me. Jordan looked at me then, nervous. Mom, we just want you to be comfortable. But his voice didn't sound like my son. It sounded like someone caught between loyalty and shame. Patrick slid a stack of papers toward Megan. She tapped them neatly into place. We'll show you these next time. Don't worry about the details yet. They had planned the next meeting. They had planned my future. They just forgot to plan for my eyes finally being open. As I left the house, something cold settled in my chest, not fear. Clarity. They weren't trying to help me. They were preparing to take control of me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the old radiator hiss and breathe in the dark. Their voices kept echoing in my mind, Patrick's authority, Bridget's fake concern, Megan's sweet poison. And behind all of it, Jordan's silence. That silence hurt more than every insult combined. Around dawn, I sat up, reached for the metal box under my bed, and took out all the documents I had kept safe for decades. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years, Mr. Quincy Dalton, my property agent. I asked if he could recommend a lawyer he trusted. He didn't hesitate. Ms. Sarah Kahn, he said. Sharp. Honest. Doesn't play. I called her office. She gave me an appointment the same afternoon. Walking into Ms. Kahn's office felt like stepping into a different world, clean lines, soft lighting, shelves neatly filled with binders. She stood when I entered, extending her hand with a polite smile. Ms. Morris? Please, sit. Tell me everything. And so I did. I told her about the Walsh family. Their comments. Their plans. Their pressure. The hidden meeting. The talk about guardianship. The push toward a care facility. The way they spoke of me like I was a burden, a problem to be handled. Then I placed the documents on her desk, deeds to 5 rental buildings, old land titles, trust papers, copies of bank statements. Her eyebrows lifted. Ms. Morris, this is substantial. I know, I said quietly. And they must never know. She leaned forward. You're not helpless. Legally or otherwise. They can't force anything, not guardianship, not control of your assets, not a facility. You have full authority. I breathed out slowly. For the first time in weeks. I felt safe. But safety wasn't enough anymore. I needed truth. I needed protection. And soon, very soon, I would need justice. Ms. Khan closed the folder gently. Let's begin. After my meeting with Ms. Khan, I walked out of her office feeling lighter, but also older. Not in a weak way. In a knowing way. Like I had finally stepped into the truth of who I had always been, instead of who others decided I was. Ms. Khan asked me to return the next morning to go over my trust documents. When I arrived, she had everything laid out neatly across her desk, my husband's original will, the titles to each property, the land deed, and the trust agreement we created years ago but rarely updated. We should reinforce everything, she said. Make sure no one can challenge your decisions, even if they try. I nodded. I don't want my son punished. But I won't let anyone use him to get to me. We can protect both, she assured me. Together, we reviewed every clause. We strengthened my ownership rights. Added a no-contest clause that would disinherit anyone who challenged my mental capacity without medical proof. Updated the trust to ensure that none of my properties could be sold or transferred without my explicit consent, even if I ever became ill. Then Ms. Khan asked a question that made me pause. Did your husband ever say why he wanted everything under your name alone? I looked at the old photo on her desk, a couple smiling at their wedding. It made me remember. My husband used to say people respect money more than character. He wanted to protect me from those who pretend to love but only love what you have. Ms. Khan nodded slowly. He was wise. As we finalized the last documents, she slid a folder toward me. These are your updated protections. Keep them somewhere safe. I held the folder in my hands, the paper warm from the lamp above us. For years, I carried these responsibilities quietly, too quietly. Now, each page felt like armor. And deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, you are not the one who should be worried anymore. 2 evenings after meeting with Ms. Khan, Jordan called and asked me to come over for a family dinner. His voice didn't sound warm. It sounded rehearsed. Still, I went. A mother always goes, at least until she learns not to. When I arrived, the atmosphere in the Walsh dining room was too polished, too staged, like a scene they'd practiced. The table was set with candles. Soft jazz played in the background. Megan greeted me with a bright smile that didn't match her eyes. Teresa. We're so glad you came, she said, squeezing my hands as if she were comforting a patient. Patrick stood at the head of the table, a stack of documents in front of him. Jordan sat beside him, shifting uncomfortably. Bridget hovered behind them, lips pressed into a soft, worried line. We wanted to talk about something important, Patrick began, his tone dripping with false compassion. We're concerned about your stability. Stability? I repeated softly. He nodded. We think it's best if Jordan is given some legal authority, just in case your memory continues to, he paused, searching for the softest dagger. Decline. Jordan looked down. His eyes flicked to mine, hesitation there, then he looked away. Megan slid the papers toward me. It's just guardianship, Teresa. For your protection. Long-term safety. You don't need to read all that complicated legal language. Complicated. There it was again. I let the silence stretch. 1 beat. 2. 3. Then I pushed the papers back gently. I won't be signing anything, I said. Patrick's smile froze. I leaned back, folding my hands calmly. I already have someone managing my affairs. Who? Megan demanded, her voice sharp. My lawyer, I replied softly. For my building. Jordan blinked. Patrick's face drained of color. They tried to speak at the same time, but I simply stood up. I'm not confused, I said quietly. I'm not declining. And I'm not yours to manage. In that moment, everything shifted. They just didn't know it yet. Jordan showed up at my apartment the next morning. He knocked fast, 3 sharp raps that sounded more like anger than concern. When I opened the door, he stepped inside before I could say a word. His face was tight, his jaw clenched, the way it used to get when he was hiding something. Mom, he said, running a hand through his hair, what was all that last night? What did you mean by my building? You embarrassed everyone. Everyone. Not him. Everyone. I set my tea mug down slowly. Sit, Jordan. He didn't. He paced instead. You blindsided us. Patrick was trying to help you. You can't just talk about lawyers and buildings out of nowhere. What's going on? I watched him carefully. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about what they might lose. Jordan, I said gently, tell me what you thought they were planning. He flinched. They just wanted to secure things. Make sure you're safe. You've been looking tired. A little confused. I let out a small breath. Is that what they told you? Or what you wanted to believe? He didn't answer. So I walked to my drawer, took out the old leather folder, and placed a single document on the table, the original title to the building he and Megan lived in. He stared at it, then at me, confusion spreading across his face. Mom, what is this? It's the truth, I said quietly. I own that building. I've owned it for years. Jordan's mouth fell open, but no words came out. You never asked, I added softly. And they never imagined it. His breath hitched. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to love me without needing anything from me. His shoulders slumped, but he still didn't sit. And in that silence, I saw it clearly, the boy I raised was slipping, and the man Megan's family shaped was taking his place. 2 days after the confrontation with Jordan, I noticed something strange. My phone buzzed non-stop, missed calls, half-written text messages, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. At first I thought it was a glitch. Then I listened. The first voicemail was Bridget, her voice syrupy sweet but trembling with anger. Teresa, darling, there seems to be confusion about your assets. I'm sure you didn't mean to worry Jordan. Please call us back. We just want to help. The second voicemail wasn't sweet at all, Patrick's voice thundered through the speaker. You don't know what you're doing. You're being influenced by someone irresponsible. Teresa, stop this before it gets messy. Messy. He meant inconvenient. The third voicemail chilled me the most. Megan's hushed tone, sharp and frantic. She's lying, Mom. She must be confused. There's no way she owns that building. Dad, we need to handle her before she ruins everything. Before she ruins everything. I replayed it twice. By afternoon, the Walshes had crafted a new story, one they shared with Megan's cousins, family friends, and even some people Jordan worked with. Teresa's memory is slipping. She's overwhelmed by paperwork. She's imagining things. We're trying to protect her, but she's resisting help. It was a full campaign, a smear made of whispers. To make matters worse, Jordan came by again that evening looking drained. Mom. Megan's upset. Her parents are furious. They said your claims could cause legal trouble. Can you please just let them help? Help. They kept using that word like it meant love. I walked to the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. Jordan, I said softly, they're not trying to help me. They're trying to erase me. He didn't argue. He just looked away, and in that tiny gesture, I saw how far I had fallen in his new world. He didn't believe them completely, but he didn't believe me either. Not yet. The morning after Jordan's visit, I woke before sunrise with a strange calm in my chest, like the eye of a storm had settled inside me. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and laid out everything the Walshes didn't know I had. Titles. Trust documents. ledger copies. Even the small flash drive where the recordings were saved. Step by step, I began to sort them. First, I marked every recording with a date and a brief summary. Lunch, Bridget suggests guardianship. Brunch, Megan calls me financially unstable. Dinner ambush, Patrick pushes papers. Each clip felt heavier than the last, but also clearer. They weren't just being cruel, they were building a case to trap me. They wanted control of my assets long before they even knew what I owned. Then I printed screenshots of Megan's social posts, supporting my sweet mother-in-law as she ages. Grateful we can guide her through her financial challenges. Found a lovely care home for her, blessed. Blessed. They turned my life into a charity project for likes. By noon, I had a full binder prepared, tabs, summaries, evidence. The kind of organized truth Patrick hated. The kind of truth he couldn't spin. I called Ms. Khan. She answered on the first ring. Teresa? I have everything, I said. Bring it. When I arrived at her office, she spread the binder across her desk, her eyes widening as she skimmed each section. This, she said slowly, tapping her finger on a recording transcript, isn't just rude. This is manipulation. Coercion. Possibly financial abuse. Then she opened the folder with the land deed, the one Patrick's company had used without permission. This, she whispered, is criminal. I sat very still, hands folded in my lap. I had known they wanted control. But I hadn't realized they were already stealing from me. And that changed everything. Within days, Megan's campaign spread through her social circle like perfume, sweet on the outside, toxic underneath. I didn't follow her social media, but people around me did. A neighbor's niece showed me the first post while scrolling on her phone during a grocery run. There I was. Standing awkwardly beside Megan in a picture I didn't remember being taken. My sweater looked worn, my hair a little frizzy, my smile small. Megan, on the other hand, looked radiant, leaning toward me like she was comforting a fragile grandmother. The caption cut deeper than any insult said to my face, supporting my sweet mother-in-law as she journeys into her next chapter. Aging isn't easy, but love makes it beautiful. Aging. Journey. Support. I stared at the screen as the girl kept scrolling. Photo after photo showed me in moments I hadn't noticed her phone pointed at me. Me carrying a small grocery bag. Me sitting alone in a chair at the engagement dinner. Me in the background, blurred, head down. Every caption painted the same picture, we're helping her transition. She's struggling with finances. So proud to guide her through this season. Considering care options for her own well-being. Care options. She said it like I was a stray they rescued. In one photo, Megan held my arm gently, her smile angelic. The comments poured in, "Oh Megan, you're so kind. Your heart is beautiful. She's lucky to have you. You're doing God's work caring for elders." I felt my throat close. They weren't just humiliating me behind closed doors. They were building a public story, one where they were the heroes and I was the helpless old burden. I printed every post, every caption, every comment. Placed them in plastic sleeves. Filed them under a new label, public manipulation. Because this story they were telling, I was going to rewrite it. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Megan, bright, cheerful, dripping with emojis. "Hi Teresa. We're hosting a housewarming and business celebration next month. Big night for the family. Your presence would mean so much." I'd seen Patrick do this before, use homes like showrooms, proof to partners that Walsh Development created luxury. Presence. Not participation. Not honor. Presence, like a decoration they needed to complete the picture. When I didn't reply fast enough, Bridget called. "Teresa, dear, we insist you attend," she said, her tone too smooth. "It will be a beautiful evening. A chance for everyone to see how well we take care of you. Take care of me." Then Patrick got on the line. "Teresa, be reasonable. People expect to see the whole family. It reflects well on Jordan. Just show up, smile, and let us handle everything." Understand? I understood perfectly. They wanted me displayed like a charity accessory, planted in a corner for sympathy points. They wanted business partners to see their generosity. They wanted friends to admire their compassion. They wanted to parade me in my old clothes while they drank champagne and bragged. And they wanted me quiet. When the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall as evening light faded across the floor. The room felt heavy, but inside me? Inside me something sharpened. I picked up the phone and called Ms. Khan. "It's happening," I said. Her voice steadied. "A public event?" "Yes." "When?" "4 weeks." "Their apartment?" "The one you own?" "Exactly." There was a soft pause, then a breath from her that almost sounded like relief. "This is the moment you've been waiting for, Teresa." "No," I corrected gently. "This is the moment they've been creating." I looked at the binder of evidence on my table, neat, organized, undeniable. At that party, I wasn't going to embarrass them. I was going to expose them. The night before the party, I didn't sleep much. Not from fear, those days were over, but from calculation. My mind kept replaying every insult, every laugh behind my back, every time they spoke of me like I was already gone. Each memory felt like a thread tightening around a knot I was finally ready to pull loose. I stood in front of my closet, looking at the clothes hanging there. I didn't reach for anything new or polished. Instead, I chose the same faded coat I wore during our first dinner. The old sweater with thinning sleeves. My soft-soled shoes with worn edges. Clothes that told a story they believed. If they wanted a helpless old woman, they were going to get one, until the moment they didn't. I spread everything out on my kitchen table under the glow of the overhead light. One folder, property deeds. One envelope, the land title Patrick's company forged permits against. One small recorder, filled with their voices, clear, undeniable. One binder, screenshots of Megan's charity posts. Ms. Khan had already drafted it and queued the filings. Tonight, I wasn't improvising, I was delivering. One letter, a formal eviction notice, signed and notarized. I placed each item into my old brown handbag, the same one Megan loved to mock. Its handles were worn, but tonight it would carry more power than anything in that apartment. Before heading to bed, I stepped onto my small balcony. The night air was cool, the city humming quietly below. I whispered into the darkness, not a prayer, but a promise: they will see me. Not the poor mother they invented. Not the burden they painted me to be. Not the woman they hoped would disappear into a care home. They would see Teresa Morris, the woman they should have never underestimated. I turned off the lights, letting the quiet settle into my bones. Tomorrow, they would meet the truth. The evening of the party arrived with a strange kind of stillness, the kind that comes before a heavy storm. I stood outside the entrance of the building, my building, watching luxury cars line up along the curb. People in glittering clothes stepped out, laughing, greeting each other with air kisses and champagne-ready smiles. For a moment, I let myself feel the weight of my old coat on my shoulders, the rough fabric against my neck, the thin handles of my worn handbag digging into my palm. I knew exactly how I looked, out of place, outdated, invisible. Good. Let them underestimate me one last time. I stepped into the marble lobby. The security guard, dressed in neatly pressed navy, looked up and smiled kindly. The building staff knew me, the office, the guard, the maintenance crew. The party guests didn't. Tonight, he played along, nodding quietly as if I were just another guest. "Evening, Ms. Morris," he whispered. "You look strong tonight." His words settled around me like armor. Upstairs, music thumped behind the apartment door. Laughter spilled into the hallway. I could hear Patrick's loud voice, Megan's bright hosting tone, and Bridget's soft hum of approval as she floated among their guests like a queen. I paused outside the door, not from fear, but from clarity. This was the final moment before everything changed. Inside was the world they built on lies. Inside was the story they painted about me. Inside were the people who saw me as a prop, a pity project, a burden. But tonight, I wasn't stepping into their world. I was stepping into my property, with my truth, and carrying the quiet storm they never saw coming. I lifted my hand and knocked gently. 3 soft taps. The same way I always knocked. But tonight, I wasn't there to be welcomed. I was there to end the show. The door swung open, and Patrick stood there in a navy suit that looked stitched from arrogance itself. His expression flickered, surprise first, then annoyance, then the overly bright smile he used when he needed to pretend. "Teresa. You made it," he said loudly, as if announcing a charitable donation had just arrived. Come in, come in." The moment I stepped inside, the room shifted. Conversations paused for a beat as guests glanced over, taking in my old coat, my worn shoes, my small bag. Some offered tight, polite smiles, others simply blinked and turned back to their drinks. I walked slowly, letting the scene paint itself around me. Bridget glided over, touching my arm lightly. "You poor dear," she cooed. "You must be overwhelmed. All these people, all this energy, it must be so much for you." Megan arrived next, her smile strained. "Mom, you're here." "Oh, everyone, this is Teresa. She's a little shy, but we're taking such good care of her." Taking care of me. They said it like I was a stray dog they had rescued. A few guests murmured, "She's the mother? She seems fragile. Bless them for helping her." My heart stayed steady. I'd prepared for every word. Then Megan pulled me gently to the side. "Come sit," she urged, guiding me toward a small cushioned armchair placed deliberately against the wall, close enough for people to see me, far enough to keep me out of their way. It was the same kind of placement Bridget used at the engagement dinner. A sympathy seat. A display. I sat down quietly, folding my hands in my lap, watching the room swirl with polished laughter and expensive scents. But this time, I wasn't shrinking. I was studying. Waiting. Across the room, I spotted a familiar face, Ms. Khan, standing near the window, disguised among the guests, her posture calm, her eyes alert. This wasn't humiliation. This was the final breath before the truth entered the room. From my little armchair in the corner, I watched the room like a person watching a play they had already memorized. Every gesture, every smile, every polite lie, none of it surprised me anymore. Megan fluttered around the room like a bride at her second wedding, arranging guests, praising herself, laughing just a little too loudly. Patrick held court near the bar, bragging about business deals and future developments as if he were king of a city he didn't build. Then, through the shifting bodies and clinking glasses, I saw her, Miss Sarah Khan. She stood near the window, dressed simply but sharply, blending in yet entirely in control of the space around her. She held a glass of sparkling water, but she didn't sip it. She observed. Calculated. Waited. Our eyes met for a brief second. She gave the smallest nod. A nod only meant for me. Bridget drifted past, pausing when she noticed Miss Khan. "Oh. You must be one of Patrick's associates," she chirped. Ms. Khan smiled politely. "Something like that." Her calm unsettled Bridget, who blinked twice before retreating toward safer ground. I watched the exchange quietly, feeling a slow warmth rising in my chest, not joy, not yet, but relief. The kind that comes when you realize you are no longer standing alone. I shifted my old handbag closer to my feet. Inside it, every truth I owned waited patiently. A server stopped beside me. "Something to drink, ma'am?" I looked at the tray of champagne flutes, then shook my head. "Not yet," I said softly. "Not until it's time." Across the room, Patrick's laughter boomed again, loud, confident, familiar. He had no idea the room had already begun to tilt. He couldn't see the storm gathering behind the quiet woman in the corner. But Miss Khan saw it. And so did I. Tonight, I wasn't the one being taken care of. Tonight, I was the one about to take back everything. I was still sitting quietly, hands folded, when Patrick stepped onto the small platform near the bar and tapped his glass for attention. The room fell into a soft hush. Music lowered. All eyes turned toward him, exactly how he liked it. Thank you all for being here, he announced, voice booming with pride. Tonight we're not just celebrating Jordan and Megan's beautiful home, he gestured around as if he owned the walls, but also the continued success of Walsh Development Group. People clapped politely. Megan beamed. Bridget dabbed her eyes dramatically, as if emotion cost extra. Patrick raised his glass again. Family is everything. And part of family is caring for those who need a little extra support. His hand swept vaguely in my direction. A ripple moved through the room. Eyes turned toward me, soft, pitying, patronizing. The kind of eyes people use for abandoned pets and fragile antiques. Megan stepped forward, her voice dripping with warmth. My sweet mother-in-law Teresa is here tonight. She's been through so much. But don't worry, Jordan and I are doing everything we can to make sure she's comfortable. Comfortable. The word thudded in my chest. Bridget chimed in, yes, Teresa is such a trooper. Adjusting to changes can be hard at her age, but we're guiding her. With love. With love. Another lie wrapped in lace. A few guests clapped softly, awkward, unsure. Some nodded sympathetically. Others whispered. I watched the scene unfold with the stillness of a woman who had already seen the ending. Patrick's voice dropped into a tone of false gravity. We're exploring care facilities for her long-term safety. It's the right thing to do. The audience murmured approval. And that was the moment. The exact moment their story crossed the line between arrogance and cruelty. Ms. Khan caught my eye from across the room. It was time. I stood slowly. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just steadily. But even that small movement made the room shift. Conversations stopped. Glasses lowered. A hush draped itself over the guests like a curtain falling before a performance. Patrick tried to laugh. Teresa, dear, no need to get up. Just enjoy yourself. I clasped my old handbag in both hands and took one step forward. If it's all right, I said, my voice calm and even, I'd like to say a few words. Megan stiffened. Bridget blinked rapidly. Jordan looked like he'd swallowed his own tongue. Patrick forced a strained smile. Ah, well, this really isn't but a few guests encouraged, let her speak. A simple request. But it gave me the room. I nodded gratefully and walked to the small space beside Patrick. He stepped back, unsettled by my quiet confidence. I appreciate your kindness, I began softly, and I'm glad everyone is enjoying this beautiful apartment. A ripple of polite smiles passed through the room. I opened my handbag and pulled out a thin folder. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Just enough movement for the front row to lean forward. But I do want to correct one thing, I continued. There seems to be confusion about ownership. Megan's face paled. I handed the top document to Mr. Quincy Dalton, who had just arrived, a guest of one of Patrick's business partners. His eyes widened when he recognized me. Ms. Morris, he whispered, this is the go ahead, I said gently. He cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. The title, the deed, the building registration, they all list the owner as, he looked up. Teresa Morris. Gasps fluttered across the room. Jordan's mouth fell open. Bridget clutched her pearls. Megan swayed. Patrick froze completely. I folded my hands. This apartment, I said softly, belongs to me. No anger. No shouting. Just truth, finally filling the room they tried to keep me small in. Silence gripped the room so tightly it felt like the walls were holding their breath. Patrick recovered first, sort of. He let out a shaky laugh that didn't match his eyes. Now, Teresa, this must be a misunderstanding. You're confused. You've been under a lot of stress. These documents, Ms. Khan stepped forward calmly. The documents are valid. Verified. Recorded with the city. Her name is the sole owner. Patrick's voice cracked. But my company negotiated the deal. Yes, Ms. Khan replied coolly, with her property manager. A gasp rippled through the guests again, louder this time, sharper. I lifted my handbag and pulled out the small recorder. It looked harmless, almost outdated. But inside it held weeks of truth. "I've been told," I said softly, "that my memory is failing. That I'm struggling. That I need guardianship and care options." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Megan's cheeks turned bright red. Bridget looked ready to faint. "So I thought," I continued, "if I was truly so confused, I should start recording things." I clicked the play button. And their voices, clear, cold, unmistakable, filled the room. Patrick's tone from the guardianship dinner: "She won't understand the paperwork. Just push it through." Megan's whisper from the brunch: "We have to handle her before she ruins everything." Bridget's voice from the patio: "Poverty leaves marks. She's used to being managed." The room erupted. Hands covered mouths. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Another shook their head in disgust. A couple of guests physically stepped away from Patrick and Bridget like their cruelty was contagious. Megan stumbled forward, eyes wide. "Teresa, please, this is taken out of context." I paused the recorder. The room went dead still. "No," I said gently. "This is the context." Their story was crumbling, piece by piece, in front of everyone they wanted to impress. And I hadn't even begun the final reveal. The room was buzzing now, uncomfortable whispers, wide eyes, hands gripping glasses a little too tightly. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Patrick tried to regain control of the space, lifting his hands as if calming a crowd. "Everyone, please, this is all a misunderstanding. Teresa is clearly..." Ms. Khan stepped forward before he could finish. "No one here is confused except you, Mr. Walsh." His jaw snapped shut. I reached into my handbag again, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out the large envelope I had saved for this exact moment. I held it loosely between my fingers as if it weighed nothing, though it carried the weight of a wrecking ball. "These," I said quietly, "are copies of the construction permits filed by Walsh Development Group last year." Patrick stiffened. I handed the envelope to Ms. Khan. She opened it and pulled out the neatly tabbed documents, reading aloud for the crowd: "Forgery. Unauthorized land use. Submission under a false owner's signature. Illegal zoning adjustments." A loud gasp cut through the room. Several guests stepped back from Patrick. One whispered, "Isn't that a felony?" Ms. Khan continued, "These permits use Teresa Morris's land she owns outright, without her knowledge or consent. Your company forged her signature." Patrick's face turned the color of spoiled milk. That's ridiculous. "My team handled that paperwork. Your voice memo says otherwise," I replied, pulling out my phone. I pressed play. Patrick's voice boomed through the speakers, "Just sign it. No one checks these things. That old woman won't know the difference." Gasps. Disgusted groans. A woman covered her mouth. Bridget's legs buckled. She gripped a chair to steady herself. Megan whispered, "Daddy, what did you do?" I felt the room shift completely, not toward me, but away from them. Their empire didn't just crack. It collapsed. And I still had one final truth waiting. The room had turned into a storm, gasps, whispers, sharp breaths cutting the air. The Walshes stood frozen, each one unraveling under the weight of their own words and deeds. But out of everyone, Jordan looked the most shattered. He stood near the edge of the crowd, his hands trembling, his eyes locked on me like he was seeing me for the first time in years. His face was pale, tight, and torn, confusion bleeding into shame. "Mom," he whispered. It was barely a sound, but I heard it above everything. He stepped forward slowly, as if each movement cost him something. Megan reached for him, but he pulled his arm away, the first crack in their perfect picture. "Is this true?" he asked, voice breaking. "All of this, everything they said, everything they did to you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Ms. Khan held the documents beside me. The recorder in my hand glowed with paused audio. The guests kept glancing between me and the Walshes, waiting for more, judging, condemning. Jordan's breath shook. Why didn't you tell me, Mom? Why didn't you come to me directly? I lifted my eyes to his, soft, steady, tired. Because you stopped listening, Jordan. He swallowed, blinking rapidly. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know they were doing this to you. And yet, I replied gently, you believed every word they fed you about me. Without asking. Without pausing. Without remembering who raised you. He looked down, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes, not dramatic tears, but the kind that come from being confronted by your own failure. Megan stepped in, voice shaking. Jordan, don't let her turn this around. He backed away from her. No, he said quietly. She's not the one who turned anything. For the first time that night, Jordan stood on my side, not fully, not completely, but enough for the entire room to feel the shift. And the Walshes felt it most. Because losing public respect was one thing. But losing Jordan's loyalty? That was the wound they never expected. The room was still buzzing from Jordan's shift when I reached into my old handbag one last time. My fingers brushed the envelope I had held onto for weeks, steady, crisp, quietly powerful. I pulled it out and placed it on the small table beside me. I have one more thing, I said softly, letting my voice rest in the center of the room. Everyone turned. Even the music had faded into silence, like the speakers themselves were waiting. Miss Khan stepped closer, her presence anchoring the moment. Teresa, are you sure? She murmured. I nodded. I lifted the envelope and held it out toward Megan and Jordan. Megan hesitated before taking it, her hand trembling. The second she saw the header, her face drained of all color. Eviction, she whispered. Gasps rippled through the guests yet again, this time harsher, sharper, louder. Patrick lunged forward. You can't be serious, Teresa. This is our home, our investment, it is my building, I said, still calm. And you have violated your lease, several times. Ms. Khan stepped in, voice firm and clear. You filed illegal renovations without the owner's consent. You submitted forged permits. You attempted to place Teresa into a guardianship arrangement for access to her assets. Under state law, she has every right to terminate your tenancy immediately. Megan's jaw dropped. You're kicking us out? I'm giving you 30 days to vacate, I said gently. That's more kindness than you ever offered me. Bridget gasped as if someone slapped her. You heartless woman. After everything we did for you, I lifted my chin. You didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me. Guests nodded quietly. Someone muttered, she's right. Another whispered, they deserve it. Patrick's face twisted in rage. You can't humiliate us like this. I met his eyes. I'm not humiliating you. I'm exposing you. Megan's hands shook as she clutched the notice. Jordan looked stunned, torn between shock, guilt, and a dawning understanding of just how deep the Walsh manipulation went. The room wasn't on their side anymore. Their carefully crafted image was collapsing in real time. And I hadn't raised my voice once. The transformation in the room was instant, like someone opened a window and let the truth blow through every corner. The guests who once clung to the Walsh family's charm now backed away as if they'd witnessed a crime. Conversations turned into sharp whispers. Faces hardened. Sympathy shifted away from them, toward me. Patrick tried to stand tall, but the weight of humiliation bent his posture. His voice, so loud earlier, cracked like thin ice. Everyone just calm down, this is a misunderstanding. A family matter. But no one believed him now. A woman near the bar said loudly, forgery isn't a family matter. A man in a gray suit added, guardianship abuse? That's criminal. And another shook his head. I knew Walsh development seemed shady. Bridget looked around desperately, reaching for anyone who would meet her eyes, but people turned away, refusing even polite smiles. Her hands trembled as she clutched her pearls, her face blanched and blotchy. Megan wasn't faring any better. She hovered beside Jordan like a drowning person reaching for a floating branch, but Jordan stood stiff, grief and shame etched into his face. He could barely look at her. Her perfect image cracked, and beneath it was something frantic and scared. Patrick swung toward me again. "You did this," he spat. "You planned this whole thing." Miss Khan stepped forward. "What she planned," she said, voice steady and sharp, "was protection. What you planned was exploitation." A chorus of murmurs agreed. Megan tried one last time. "Teresa, please, you're tearing this family apart." I looked at her, not angrily, not triumphantly, but truthfully. "You tore it apart when you decided I didn't matter." The room went quiet. Then a guest exhaled loudly, "Well, that settles that." And just like that, the Walshes found themselves standing alone in the center of a room full of people, yet completely isolated. Their empire hadn't just cracked. It had collapsed in front of witnesses. And the storm they expected to break me was the one I walked out of standing tall. After the crowd began to disperse, some slipping out quietly, others shaking their heads in disbelief, Jordan stayed rooted near the window, staring out at the city lights like he didn't recognize the world he was standing in. For a long time, he didn't speak. For a long time, I let him be. Finally, he turned to me, eyes red-rimmed, face tight with confusion, guilt, and something deeper, something that looked a lot like mourning. "Mom," he whispered, "why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you let them treat you like that?" I stepped closer, slow and steady. "Because you weren't ready to hear me. You were busy building a new life, and I didn't want to stand in your way." He blinked hard, as if the truth stung more than any accusation. "I should have protected you," he murmured. "Not the other way around." I gave a soft, sad smile. A child protects their parent by growing up with love. That's all I ever wanted. He dragged a hand down his face. "I feel like I failed you." "You didn't fail me," I said gently. "You forgot me. And that's different." He swallowed, his voice cracking. "What happens now? To me? To Megan?" "That," I said softly, "is for you to figure out. I'm not here to punish you, Jordan. But I can't save you from the choices you made." He stared at me, long, searching, aching. The little boy I raised flickered in his eyes, fighting with a man shaped by another family's expectations. "Will you forgive me?" he whispered. I took his hand and squeezed it, not tightly, not lovingly, but honestly. "I'll heal," I said. "Forgiveness will come in its own time. But trust," I shook my head gently. "Trust will take work." Tears slipped down his cheeks, a quiet apology his words couldn't yet hold. And for the first time that night, the room felt human again. The morning after the party, I woke before dawn. The city was still dark, the world quiet. I stood by my kitchen window with a cup of tea warming my hands, letting the silence settle around me like a soft blanket. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for anyone's judgment. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't hiding. I was simply myself. Later that day, Miss Khan called to confirm the Walshes had already contacted their lawyer, voices frantic, scrambling. She assured me everything was in motion, the eviction, the investigation into the forged permits, the official complaint filed with the zoning board. Legally, I was safe. Emotionally, I was still piecing myself back together. Around noon, Jordan showed up at my door. No Megan. No fancy clothes. Just my son, looking tired, humbled, and unsure of where he fit in the world now that the Walsh empire had crumbled. He didn't ask to come in. He just said, "I want to do better." I nodded, stepping aside so he could sit at my table, the same table where I taught him his alphabet, where we ate beans and rice on long nights, where I once dreamed he'd become a man of his own choosing. We talked, not like mother and child, but like two people rebuilding something fragile. He didn't beg. He didn't defend Megan. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He just listened. Really listened. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a start. When he left, I walked to my small balcony and breathed in the cool air. The city stretched before me, busy, loud, unforgiving. Yet I felt light. Not victorious, Not triumphant. Just free. My story wasn't about destroying anyone. It was about reclaiming myself. And as the sun rose behind the buildings I quietly owned, I whispered a truth I had earned with every wound and every step: no one gets to erase me again. Bittersweet. But mine. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it. If you have a unique story of your own, share it in the comments below. Thank you for listening.